Hello everybody. I'm going to start. I want to give a short introduction into our basic theoretical principles so that you can get a better understanding of what is our labor time app about. Our most important theoretical reference is the book Fundamental Principles of Communist Production and Distribution, which was written by the group of international communists, the GIC, in 1930. In this book, they criticize Soviet state socialism and its centralized planning economy as a new form of domination over the working classes. They present their own model of a socialist economy as an alternative to the Soviet model. In the model of the GIZ, not the state, but self-managed cooperatives are the basic agencies of the society. These cooperatives are managed by its workers in democratic councils. These councils make all decisions referring to the organization of the production process within their corporation, including the creation of periodical plans. This is important. The cooperatives have the initiative of planning. In this sense, you can call this a decentralized planning economy. For business-related planning, you need a unit of calculation. This is not money anymore, like in a capitalist mode of production, but labor time, because every product is a product of labor. So you can calculate very easily the time that is needed to produce a certain good. To make this calculation, you add up the different elements of the production process in a production formula, which goes F plus C plus L. Fixed means of production, like machinery and buildings, plus circulating means of production like raw materials, which are both labor that has already been spent, plus the actual labor that is needed to produce a new good. In our presentation, we will use the German variant of the formula, P plus R plus A. Produktionsmittel plus Rohstoffe plus Arbeitszeit. We haven't had the time to change that in our English surface. These different elements of the production process transfer their labor cost to the new products in a different way. The machinery does this proportionally over a long time period of many planning cycles, while the raw materials are consumed entirely in the actual production process. The same goes for the actual labor, which creates, in fact, the new good. I want to give a simple example. Let's say we have a plan for 1 year. When you have a machine that lasts 10 years, you take for the actual plan 1/10 of it. Let's say 1,000 of 10,000. Then you have also 400 hours for raw materials and 100 hours of actual labors.
Sorry
That
to
makes a total
interrupt.
product.
Sorry to interrupt real quick.
Sorry.
Do you need to screen share anything, or is it just spoken presentation for this first part?
I have some notes. I have no presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. The machinery does this. Okay, the different elements of the production process transfer their labor costs to the new products in a different way. The machinery does this proportionally over a long time period of many planning cycles, while the raw materials are consumed entirely in the actual production process. The same goes for the actual labor, which creates the new good. I want to give a simple example. You have a machine that lasts 10 years. You take for the actual plan the 1/10 of it when the plan goes 1 year. So let's say 1,000 of 10,000. Then you have also 400 hours for raw materials and 100 hours of actual labor. That makes a total product of 1,500 hours in the plan. If you produce 100 chairs in this planning period, you have an average cost of 15 hours per chair. That would be the consumer price. Consumers now can buy these products because they received labor certificates for the work they have fulfilled in their cooperative. In this way, the whole society can see what are the different social outlays for the different goods, and at the same time, an economic equilibrium will be created between the total inputs and outputs of labor. I know the fact that only working people can buy goods seem at first a little bit meritocratic, but this will be undermined. I would say more about this soon. Anyway, the main idea is to prevent the possibility of what Marx called the appropriation of alien labor in the first place. In this context, it is also important to mention that in the GIC concept, every labor hour counts equal. This shall also prevent a fallback into class society. But let's get back to the planning process. If you want to create an economic equilibrium, it is also clear that you have to prove and unite the different plans of the worker cooperatives. To ensure this, it's an important step in our theory that cooperatives of the same trade create planning associations. The GIC called them guilds. Within these associated cooperatives of the same industry can transfer knowledge and technology to create a form of cooperation of a higher social level, and at the same time, they can also create an average association price for the goods of the same industry. It's just the same way of calculation like in the individual cooperative. But now you divide the total of goods of the same industry through the total of hours that were needed to produce these goods in this industry. Through this procedure of associated planning, the different cooperatives can also develop an average productivity. The main incentive, though, is not competition, but cooperation. So planning associations are one crucial step to create social planning. The other important step is to have the possibility of social control, because it is clear that the cooperatives cannot always do as they wish. There must be a social need for their goods in the first place. And aside from that, the society should overlook that the outlay of labor that is spent for a certain good is not above of a normal level. This shall prevent cooperative egoism or other criminal behavior. To guarantee this, a social accounting agency is needed. This is a very important political institution. The members of it, the accountants, should be elected democratically. The GIC even think they are more like a company than a state agency. But sadly, we have no time to discuss this more deeply now. The social accounting agency proves all the different plans that were submitted by the individual or associated cooperatives. The agency mainly compares the actual plans of a cooperative with its former plans to prove that everything runs more or less regular, and it also proves how many of the goods that a cooperative has produced were actually consumed in the last period, because this should primarily determine the plan of the next period. In this way, the activities of the different cooperatives will not only be public, but they will also be checked by society so that it is certain that their work is indeed really needed by the society. If everything seems regular in the actual plan, it will be approved. The cooperative will then get a credit, which is equivalent to the data of hours they gave in their plan. With this credit, they can buy the means of production they need, and they can pay their workers. Our Labor Time app is a software tool for the work of the social accounting agency. So I hope you will get more insight into the important approval process of a plan during the presentation of my comrades. But first, I want to stress briefly two more points. The first point is the different individual plans are recorded publicly by the social accountant agency. So it is easy for them to add up all the different plans to a social general ledger. The production formula turns out to be also a total social reproduction formula. In this way, you can get information about the outlays of the whole economy. This allows you to create a very exact economic statistics. And furthermore, the society can make general political decisions based on the information they get from these statistics. These decisions can in turn have influence on the planning decisions made by the workers of the different cooperatives, but it still remains a bottom-up planning. Second point, one of the most important political decisions to make will be the size of the communal sector of society. Of course, a socialist society has to take care of all the people that are not able to work. So there have to be a lot of cooperatives which produce goods that are for free for example, hospitals, kindergartens, schools, and so on. Housing and electricity should be for free as well, maybe even staple food. All the work that has to be done for the communal sector must be deducted equally from the individual consumption fund of all working people. For this, the society has to calculate a factor of individual consumption called FIC. For example, if half of the total social work is done in the communal sector, the FIC is 0.5. That means that every worker gets for one labor hour only 0.5 certificates. So every worker can see that half of their labor time they work for the good of society, including, of course, themselves. This is a very transparent procedure of distribution of surplus labor. It is also clear that this communal sector has to grow more and more for a true transition into a communist society, which will then undermine and finally abolish its former meritocratic aspects. So in the long run, the FIC tends to zero. I hope you could follow this very short run-through and you hopefully recognize that labor time accounting in the sense of the GAC is indeed about communal reproduction through decentralized economic planning. Thank you for listening.
I think I'm to go next. And so my name is Amitai Aviram, and I'm going to present a few more technical details of the IDA app. You should, let's see, be able to see my slideshow. Can you see it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, looks good.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So, yeah, I'm gonna, and actually, I want to time this. Um, okay. So, uh, the I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's the wrong presentation. Sorry about that. Um, stress. That's my simulation project.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. I meant to share this one. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, here we go. This is wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's doing that because I thought I selected the right one. Just bear with me for just a second.
Technology works until you need it to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh, right. This is very odd. I think, oh, I see what the problem was. Okay. It should say, Ida Arbeitszeitapp. Do you
Yes,
see
that's what we see.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was kind of unnecessarily stressed about that. Okay, so the app is organized around five fundamental roles that Andre uh, mentioned kind of in his narrative, or, his explanation of the basic theory. So you could sort of break that theory down to these five roles. There are members. A member is somebody who's eligible uh, to have work hours recorded. So that would be not only a worker, but also someone who, let's say, cannot work and is a recipient of support from the public sector, um, because that support would also take the form of the transfer of hours. There are companies which consist of members who, as workers, who determine company policy democratically. There are accountants. There's this special role of the accountant in the accountant's agency, which is itself a kind of company. And then there are the organizations that Andre mentioned as guilds, which in this presentation are called planning associations, and that's what they're called in the app. Also.
Amitai, are you still showing the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Where
Yeah.
it says use cases.
sorry, I'm just going through these roles, and then finally there's the coordinator, um, which is a company that's in charge of basically just running the planning association administratively. Okay, this should be the second slide, right? So this is a diagrammatic representation of the life of a member in a sense, or the app experience from the point of view of a member. So a member first,
Well, I still see the IDA app
okay, I
slide.
see. That's not good.
Oh, there. Okay, now I see the roles slide.
Okay, I'm sorry. So everything that I said so far pertained to this slide, which,
Okay.
yeah, so just take a second. You can see these five roles. Um, yeah. Sorry. And wait, with their respective descriptions. So now I'm going to go on. Sometimes that has something to do with the communication between Zoom and Keynote. Okay, this should be the next slide, right? You should see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
I
right.
think the issue might be full screen mode and how they interact with Zoom, perhaps. It's
Exactly.
weird.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, so an individual registers as a member, and then a company may invite that member to serve as a worker in the company or to work to participate in the company, and then the member may accept. And so these are all the organization of the rest of this presentation is based upon the top or highest level of abstraction in the app, which we encode as use cases. So basically, what I've done is translated the use cases into stories. And so this is a story of the member, and these boxes mostly correspond to encoded use cases. So that would include things like accepting an invitation from a company. So then the presumably the worker works, and the company registers that worker's hours, and then registering the worker's hours means transferring hours in a database to the worker's account, so that the worker can then um, exchange those hours for consumables. Now, in that process, the company also, when the company registers the worker's hours, the company also registers the appropriate quantity to the public sector for the public fund. So the worker's hours as registered for the worker or as transferred to the worker are subject to that FIC, the factor of individual consumption that Antoine mentioned. So you can think of that as kind of the inverse, the additive inverse of a tax. Um, so um, yeah, what I just described about the transfers, that's actually in this slide, basically that when a worker actually, yeah, when a worker then um takes the registered hours to for consumption, so then that worker's hours are debited by the quantity that is um the uh the the uh the value of that product as determined by the planning association. And I'll actually come back to that in a moment when I discuss companies and planning associations. Um, so in other words, the main point here is just that the app um, encapsulates or implements these transfers of value. So this is a representation of the set of use cases pertaining to a company. Any individual can start a company, register a company. And when that registration occurs, the company um, is entered into the database with these four accounts of hours. There's the three input accounts and the one output account. So following what Andre said, the German abbreviations for these are the means of production P, Produktionsmittel, the resources or raw materials, Rohstoffe, and the living labor hours, the Arbeitszeit, and then there's an output account, the PRD, the product account. So so it's just got these empty accounts to start with, and then a company will create a a plan draft, and which is the product of some kind of democratic process within the company, and it can also, once it exists, it can also invite workers to work at the company, and it can also join a planning association. And with that plan draft, it files the plan draft when it's ready. A plan draft consists of an estimated quantity for those uh, those P, R, and A accounts for some quantity of products to be produced in some unit. So you see, so in a sense, it's a pair of input with output, where the inputs are the respective quantities of those input accounts, and then the output is some quantity of a product. And so it submits that draft plan to an accountant for approval. And if the accountant rejects the plan, then the company would go back to draft another plan. If it approves, if the accountant approves, sorry, of the plan, then the company can have its workers work to produce the product, and it would register hours, as we've seen before. And it can also spend down the P&R accounts with other companies to transfer hours in order to obtain, fixed means of production and raw materials. And this slide goes over those, basically what I just described, the plan, what constitutes the plan draft, and the meanings of the various accounts or the quantity specified in it. So a plan draft is usually, everything that I've said so far is aimed primarily at these ordinary companies rather than parts of the public sector. The public sector would also have a plan. It has plans for goods and services, but it does not need to have any hours exchanged for its goods and services when it distributes those to consumers. So right. So then this slide just specifies that, more technically what constitutes these transfers of hours. When a plan is approved, basically the company gets credited for everything that all of its inputs that it says that it's going to need. And it's debited for the sum of that same amount. So the PRD account is always, as an invariant, it's always the negative of the sum of those three input accounts. And then when it finishes producing its promised goods and services and they go out to the distributor for consumption, then the act of consumption will increment the PRD account, you see, so that basically while the company is working, those input accounts come down to zero but you've got a negative PRD account. And then as the products, goods and services are consumed, the PRD account comes up from some negative value towards zero. And then the accountant is the one who actually gets to check everything that I've just described. So the accountant, here's the story, sort of the story of the accountant. An accountant, being a kind of special member of this community, becomes an accountant by invitation of the app administrator, and accepts that invitation. And then the accountants get these plans, so to speak, anonymously. That is, when a company submits a draft plan, the company doesn't really target it towards an individual. It just sends it to accounting, and then whatever accountants are available can review that draft plan. Basically, it will review it for sensible criteria, such as a reasonable match of inputs to expected inputs for the given output product, and the history, the company's history and the general history of the of the production of that good or service. And then if the accountant approves of the draft plan, then the app will, the approval action will credit the input accounts as requested, and will debit the product account, the output account, by the same amount, the negative sum. And this just kind of reviews what I just said. So that I just want to focus on the last point, that the approval requirements are sort of assumed to be socially agreed standards, right? So there's some kind of socially agreed criteria. And finally, a company can join a planning association, and the most important role of the planning association in the app is that the planning association computes the average socially necessary labor for a given product by means of observing the actual labor as estimated by all of the plans to produce that product. So it's got a bunch of companies in it, and each of these companies has submitted a plan to produce some product X. In order to obtain the sort of standard value of that product, it just takes the average of all of those planned averages, and that's the value that the worker will exchange for that product from a distributor, who is just another company responsible for transferring products to workers. A company can at any point be the coordinator for a planning association, and those coordinators can change, at various times. Yeah, so one subtle point, since the actual planned hours for a given product may differ somewhat from the average, you'd expect that from the average computed by the planning association, and the average is what the worker transfers in for that product. So the way we've implemented it in the app, the planning association is also responsible for implementing the compensatory transfer. So let's say my company takes more time than average to make a product. When that product is consumed, the worker will transfer the average amount to me, to my company. I'm sorry, the average value in labor to me, and then the association will transfer the difference between my planned cost in labor and the average cost in labor. Where will it get that quantity? We'll get it from the companies that work faster than average. You see, so they'll become, they'll um, they'll have that difference taken away from what is transferred to them by workers, so that it all works out. Every company gets what it plans to spend in work hours to produce its goods and services. Okay, that's it for me.
Okay, thanks so much, Amitai. So that's it for the gray theory. Now we have a look at the app. Let me see if I can share my window. Yeah, you should see my should see the app now, the start page of the app.
Yes.
And yeah, you can see that that's how the web app looks. That's a starting page. We can change here already the language to Spanish, German, or English. That's so far the 3 languages that are supported. You can see already that you can, here you can log in as a member or worker, as a company, or as an accountant. And you can see that we already have some plans here in this economy because I already prepared the database. So in this instance of the app, in this economy, there are already some companies and some plans. And I will show you what we have so far. We have this nice presentation here. You can see that in our app, I just want to show you what I already prepared beforehand. We have 3 companies. They are producing apples. We have Apple Co-op 1, Apple Co-op 2, and 3, and each one of these has one plan. They are all producing apples. This sort of apple is called Golden Delicious. They need 1 month to produce 100 bags, 1 kilogram each. And this first company here expects to need 100 hours of living labor to produce these 100 bags. So it does not, for simplicity, we say it does not need raw materials and neither machinery. And this information in its plan, it comes down to the cost of 1 hour per bag. The second company produces exactly the same thing, but it needs more time to produce 100 bags. It needs 200 hours. So it has a different price for its product. It's 2 hours per bag. And the third company needs even more time. It needs 300 hours for the 100 bags, though the cost is 3 hours per bag. But these 3 companies decided to form a planning association, to attach their plans to a planning association, which is also called Golden Delicious. And this planning association, as we have heard already, averages the price or the costs. So the average of all these costs is, of course, 2 hours per bag. So if any consumer, a worker or a company wants to consume 1 bag of apples from these companies, it will have to pay 2 hours per bag. And then we have also 2 juice manufacturers in this economy. One already has a plan, the other one hasn't. And the plan of the first one, the product is called Apple Juice Class A. And this company plans that in 1 month, it can produce 1,000 bottles, 1 liter each. The labor cost of living labor is 200 hours in this month, and it will consume raw materials of 300 hours. And we can imagine if it's a juice manufacturer, these raw materials will be apples actually, and we know 1 bag of apples is 2 hours. So with 300 hours, it can consume 150 bags of apples. And this information makes that the price of 1 bottle of 1 liter is half an hour. This plan actually is also part of a planning association. It's called Apple Juice Class A, but for now it's the only plan in this planning association. So the average price is, of course, exactly the same as of the single plan. All right, and we want to log in now with a second juice manufacturer, and we want to have a look around in the app, see the economy, investigate a bit, and then create our own plan. So I will log in with this company. now I'm logged in as the Choose Co-op 2. Here you can see the ID of this company and the email address. And in this dashboard of the company, you see a lot of different different actions that you can take. The company can create a new plan, it can register consumption, it can register hours worked. You can have an overview of your plans, about your labor time accounts, about the workers of your collective, and so on. But at first, we want to have a look at this public accounting sector here, and especially the global statistics button, because here you can have an overview of the current economy of this instance of the app. And we see there are currently 5 companies registered. These are 3 Apple producers and 2 juice producers. We have only 1 worker registered in the app. We have 4 plans, like 3 apples and 1 juice plan. And we have 2 corporations for the 2 existing branches of the economy. The FIC, this payout factor, is 1. That means every worker that works 1 hour really gets work certificates of 1 hour. There is nothing deducted for public sector because there do not exist any public plans. Here you can see there exist 4 productive plans and no public plans. So the public sector is 0. You have to pay for everything with work certificates. The plant resources, mostly living labor and a bit raw materials, no fixed means. Okay. Then we can also have a look at the list of all companies. Here we have the apple producers and the juice producers. And we can have a look at the apple producer 1, for example. Here you get an overview of the company, the ID, the name, the email address, registered since, about some metrics that is especially useful for accountants if they want to check how well did this company plan in the past, how far did it deviate from its plannings, actually. And you can see the plans of this company. It has only 1 plan. It's called Gold Delicious. We can have a look at this plan. Here's all the plan information, the description, the name of the product, when it was approved, when it will expire. It will expire in 1 month, and all the costs that it takes to produce 100 amounts of 1 kilo bags of apples. And here we have also the labor time it took to produce it and the average price for this bag. All right, what else can we see? We can see all the plans. It means actually all the products also. So everyone can see what products are available, what plans are available. We can have a look at this plan for apple juice, for example, to get more information. And we can also have a look at all the corporations. We still name it corporations, but we want to rename it to planning associations. We think it's a better name. So we have 2 planning associations, the Apple Association with 3 plans and 1 association for the apple juice. We can have a look at this association, and we see it's made of 3 individual plans that have 3 different costs for 1 bag of apples, and we have an average price here. And the current coordinator is Apple Corporation 3. It's this company. Okay, so far this public accounting section. We can also look at at the plans that we have, and we will see we have no plans at all because we haven't filed anything yet. We can have a look at the labor time accounts, PR, AM, PRD, and we will see it's everything 0 because we have neither any approved plan and neither do we have consumed anything, though all these accounts are 0. Nothing happened here yet. We can, what else can we see? We can have a look at the workers of our collective, and we will see we have only 1 worker registered. She's called Chana. That's the only worker. So now let's do some action and let's create a plan because we haven't one yet. And as a juice producer, I guess we want to file a plan. So let's say we want to create a plan and we want to produce apple juice class A, which is presumably very good. and we say we will need 30 days to produce it. The smallest delivery unit is 1 liter bottle, and the amount we will produce 1,000 bottles. Now the cost for fixed means of production, so machinery is 0. Let's say we don't need machinery to produce apple juice, which is not true, but for simplicity. But we expect to need liquid means of production, raw materials, which are the apples, of course. Here in this app, you can always have click on this information button, and then it will be explained what this is actually, what it does, what it means. And we also expect that we will need 300 hours of living labor to produce that that juice. Okay, and that's it. So it's really very simple now to file a plan. We don't click this. This would mean that it's a plan for the public sector, but we want to be it a productive plan. So we save it as a draft. Now we can see it's saved in my plans as draft. And we can check here again if everything is fine, if it looks good, and if we think it's good, then we can file this plan. I click on this envelope and it's sent to social accounting for approval. And I will sign out from the company account and I will sign in with an accountant account to show you the approval dashboard. So now I'm logged in as an accountant and I can list the unreviewed plans. And there is this one that I just filed. And the role of the accountant is now to have a look at this plan, if it all makes sense, if there is no formal errors. And it can also look at the company, how well this company did in the past, what plans it had, how well they planned with these plans. And if the accountant thinks it looks good, then the accountant can here approve the plan. If there is some problem, it could reject the plan. But we think it looks good and we accept this plan. And when I log in again as a company, we will see in our plans that we now have actually an active plan. And other workers can now see our plan in the list of plans and can consume it and so on. Yeah, and if we go back now to our accounts, our labor time accounts, something interesting has happened because it's not 0 anymore. So in the account for raw materials, we see that we have now a credit of 300 labor hours, because we said we will need 300 labor hours to produce our product. And by approving our plan, this means society trusts us and it gives us this credit of 300 labor hours that we can use to get apples, for example. And we also received 300 credit on account A, the account for work certificates, which we can use to pay the workers of our collective. And as Amitai explained, the PID account is minus the sum of the other accounts. That means we promise society that we will produce and give away product worth 600 hours. Exactly. So, but now let's produce juice, and we first, of course, we have to get apples, and we don't do it in our app. We go to the apple producers actually in real life, and this apple producer gives us 150 bags of apples, and in this moment we can register the productive consumption. That means we go to the plans. To the plan of this apple. For example, we go to Apple Co-op 1. They give us 150 bags of apples. So we register consumption on this plan and say, okay, this company just gave us 150 bags of apples. It's for raw materials. I register, and that's it. Now, if we look at the accounts, we will see the account R is 0 now. The labor time went from our R account to the PRD account of the company. Good. Now we have apples, but we still need living labor, of course. And in the labor time economy, the workers don't work for nothing. They work for work certificates that they can use to get product from society. So we have to also register the hours worked. And let's say that our worker, the only worker we have until now, Chana, worked in the last days 50 hours. So we can send 50 work certificates to Chana, register it, and if we have now a look at our account of the A account for work certificates, we will see that it's not 300 anymore, but 250. So 50 work certificates went from our A account to the work certificates account of Chana. And let's just log in as Chana and have a look at the account. Here already we see she has now a credit of 50 hours. And you can also see that she has much less buttons on the dashboard because a worker does not need to file a plan and anything else. So it's much more reduced. And in that account, you can see here, she received 50 work certificates just a minute ago. And yeah, now as Chana, let's consume some product. We check what is available, and we like this apple juice of juice scope 2. Or let's take this one of juice scope 1. And we register consumption. So let's say Chana now went to the cooperative and they gave her, I don't know, 5 bottles of juice. So she registers this consumption and it's done. And in her account, she sees now that, well, 5 bottles of apple juice cost 250. And actually, of course, it leaves her account and it enters the company's account. And all company accounts are visible, are public. So we can have a look at the Apple Coop 1, and we will see here at the PID account that no, I think I'm wrong. I'm saying companies. The Juice Coop 1 was it? Yeah, we see from Chana it went to the PID account of the producing company. Yeah, that's some basic functionalities of this app. So we have seen how to create a plan, how accountants do review the plan, how companies do register hours worked or productive consumption, and how workers can register private consumption. And we checked all kind of information in the app. And note that there is no central planning agency dashboard or something like that. So it's the center of this economy and of this app is really the different companies. They are making the plans. Of course, there is some aspect of central planning also, like the accountants are following global rules, how to approve plans. But there is really no dashboard of a central planning agency. So it's really between the companies mostly how this planning works out. Okay, so I'm done with the app actually, but I will want to talk a bit about the way how we work as programmers, because there is still work to do. So as you have seen, it works. Companies can use this app and it works, and workers can get registered and register consumption, everything that works fine. But our goal is that it can be used by large communities also, so by larger economies of worker co-ops. And then a lot of things have to be done still. And you can see this actually if you have a look at our GitHub account and have a look at the issues that we have. You can get a sense of what is still needed to be done. We have several, like over 30 issues open. And if we want to scale to a larger community or make our app more professional, more better looking, whatsoever, there are a lot of things to do. Like the front end transformation could be useful. The app could look better, I guess. There are some small bugs. What else? We need async email sending, probably if you want to scale up and all this kind of stuff. So this is just like a call for interested developers. We can always need more help, and you're very welcome. We meet every Tuesday at 6:30 until 7 online. But you can also just contribute on GitHub here by doing pull requests and so on. And if you decide that you want to help us out, you can have a look at our developer documentation. It's linked here. And we try to explain as good as possible, like the basics of our app and how to get started contributing. And for example, in this documentation, we'll find the important concepts of labor time economy and how we implement it. So what are these accounts again? How is the FIC calculated in our app? How is the average price of products calculated? And what transfers of labor time are allowed in our app? So it's useful for getting a grasp of important concepts, but also for the development setup. So if you want to develop with us, here are some information about our development philosophy also. So we are trying to test as much as possible and also to implement a clean code strategy and clean architecture strategies. So we are trying to separate like the business logic, which we have in the folder Arbeitszeit. We try to separate it from presenter logic or from database implementation details. That makes testing a lot easier, for example. For example, if you look at the Arbeitszeit folder here in our code, in this folder, you won't find any reference to a specific database implementation. So it's really business logic. So all the use cases that you see here, it's use cases that are necessary for any labor time economy, basically, or any application, whether it will be a web app or an API or command line interface. You can make use of these use cases like get statistics or register private consumption. There is no reference to any SQL database or anything else. So I think it's pretty well separated. So that makes testing also easier. And then we have also development guide where we explain how we write code in our code base, how we would write code to implement a use case, for example, how we write tests to test business logic, and so on. And I think that's it from my part. Yeah, thanks.
And then I guess, Amitai, did you have something more to say? You are currently muted.
Sorry, not in the Ada app. Would you like me to go on to the simulation project? Okay. So hope for the best. Okay. Can you all see that?
Looks good on my end.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Right. So I should be on the first slide after the opening slide, correct? Like it should be a bunch of pictures.
I see Stanford beer.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Right. So at a very high level, this project brings together three different areas of thought. The theory propounded by the group of international communists that is the basis of the IDA project. It's presented by Andre and Sebastian with cybernetics, particularly as explained by Stafford Beer, and then the idea of computer-based simulation modeling, and in particular, agent-based computer simulation modeling. Um, at a very high level, our goals, actually, I should say this at the outset, before I even talk about this, that we're just at the beginning of this project. So we started this project about 3 weeks ago. And so we don't have code. We can't demonstrate anything yet. We're actually still doing a lot of background reading and planning and discussion and exchanging ideas. But what we hope to achieve by building a computer simulation model of labor time economy that also brings in ideas for cybernetics is to provide a structure in which to decide on a lot of the details that you can sort of wave your hands about if you're just describing the theory. Because you have to decide these details in order to implement a computer model. And then this would enable us to see the effects of those decisions and actually to play with various parameters or various possible decisions to see what the results would be. And then, of course, hopefully we'll be able to demonstrate that a labor time economy is a reasonable idea. Um, that is to show that it can be practical. So that argument would be based upon the structure of the simulation, that it can be effective. In other words, it can fulfill basic requirements, and also that it can work efficiently. That is by, let's say, minimizing resource use. And maximizing free time and so forth. So then those are the goals of this study, and then the goals um, of the design of the labor time economy that we will aim toward will be, first of all, just the basic thing, like to satisfying human needs. But then, and also the socialist basics to eliminate um, gross inequality and exploitation. Uh, and then further than that, to satisfy, those sort of human desires and the need for human flourishing, health and well-being, and also, sort of, a view towards the future of sort of improving living conditions over time, all within environmental constraints. Um, so we can encode those environmental constraints into the simulation. And this design should minimize, and here's the cybernetic component in particular, to minimize the need for conscious human intervention in the form of political agents or agencies. Like you want to have as much of the economic system just work through signals and responses as possible so that the political sphere can be reserved for what you might call truly or properly political matters, like the decision of fundamental goals of the society. Um, and uh, and then yeah, accordingly, we would want the design to include intrinsic controls to make that possible. Okay, so um, what we have in mind is an agent-based model where we represent the agents that participate in the economy as classes or objects of classes or other subprograms. This is what's called an ER diagram, an entity relationship diagram. It's just meant to be suggestive. So this is sort of what a database representation of a very minimal kind of labor time economy would look like. And it sort of follows the IDA model. And here, this picture is just supposed to represent the kinds of interactions that you would have, the transfer of hours of work and records of hours, and then the transfer of hours for the various needs to produce, and then needs for human reproduction and flourishing. The clock up at the corner is to represent the idea that in a computer, in an agent-based computer simulation model of the sort that we have in mind, you, you would have a kind of little world tracked through time, through fixed intervals, what's called fixed interval time advance. And we would be able to observe changes in state and general patterns. For instance, the flow of hours and products over time, by having a kind of time series. Um, so um, we in this whole study, we hope to resolve a whole bunch of questions. So basically, right now, among other things, we're aside from just sort of getting up to speed in background, we're compiling the kinds of questions that we would like ideally to answer. So, for instance, in the absence of a market, of a capitalist style market, um, how is information transmitted? This is usually the claim for by proponents of capitalist markets, that they're the most efficient way of transferring information necessary to maintain the system, to allow the system to be self-maintained. Now, I think we all know that that doesn't actually work. It doesn't work that way. But we would like to be able to make the same claim for labor time based socialist economy. So how are supply and demand signaled, and then what response occurs for those signals, and also quality control. How do you ensure the quality of products and services that normally you could claim that that's done also through market signals. So what do we replace those market signals with? Um, and then um, like how labor power needs, this point is about the allocation of labor in order to fulfill the needs of the system. How do you do that? Like how are the signals transmitted in order to get workers to work in the right areas, in order to fulfill the society's needs? And then to do so in a way that honors the general goals, like that's equitable and so forth. How is the information propagated throughout the system and its sub processes? So what serves as signals, and uh, how can they trigger automatic controls or automatic responses? Um, and then I'm particularly interested in this question of incentives, which actually came up in the chat. Um, I could
So,
share.
just real quick, we do have around 20 minutes left for the event, so please try to leave some time at the end for the Q&A and discussion. We'll get to all those questions in the chat once you're done with the presentation.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll just say briefly that we're interested in the question of incentives, how to avoid disincentives, a disincentive for innovating in a way that improves productivity, and how, on the contrary, to build in incentives to make those innovations beneficial for everybody. and also how to provide incentives to get difficult and dangerous work done. We're also interested in questions of timing and coordination. For instance, the expenditure of hours for a change of machinery has to happen at one moment. It's a big sum over one moment, and that's sort of different from the time scale of the usual production cycle for raw materials and work. And so, how are we going to manage that difference in time scales? And then we have some of these larger scale challenges. So uh, how will we manage the interface between the labor time economy and the outer money economy, and in a way that doesn't undermine the labor time economy? And then I mentioned the reallocation of labor and how to do that. Um, humanely and equitably. And then is it possible to build a simulation that would actually allow us to witness the emergence of the system that we're designing spontaneously out of a given set of initial conditions? Okay, that's it for me.
All right, thank you everyone for your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.